everyone, thanks for visiting my channel. If you're new, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you will consider subscribing, like and share my videos, and follow me on social media. I will leave all the links in the description box below. So today I'm so excited to start my Christmas series. I know I'm a little bit behind in getting videos out, but I have a few coming up, and then we'll round everything up like I do each year and go through gifting. So we are going to be doing a canning recipe today. We're going to be making maple walnut syrup, and yes, it is safe for canning. Typically nuts are not safe for canning, only in tested recipes. This is a tested recipe by Ball. It is found in the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. It is also found in the Ball Blue Book, and I do believe it's also on their fresh preserving website. So I'll be sure to link everything for you in the description box so you know where to find all the information to make sure that it is a tested recipe. Anyway, this is going to be fast and furious, really simple, and really delicious. And just as an FYI, I'm going to be pairing this with another recipe that I'm going to be sharing with you for Christmas gifting. We're going to pair it with apple butter pancakes. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. So anyway, this is super simple, has just a handful of ingredients. You're going to need some walnuts, of course. They say to just use walnut pieces, so you can chop them if you want to. I just broke my halves with my fingers. I didn't bother to chop them, and you can make them as small or as big as you want them. You need some granulated sugar. I'm going to be using brown sugar. I want some depth of flavor, which we're going to have with the maple syrup, but I want more depth of flavor and I want it for the color. Sugars are interchangeable in canning, so you can use a half a cup of granulated white sugar, or you can use a half a cup of lightly packed brown sugar. I'm going to be using the light brown sugar. We need some maple syrup, a little bit of water, and some corn syrup. Now I know how some of you feel about corn syrup, but there's no way around it. It is part of this recipe. So you pick and choose how you want to proceed, but we have to use corn syrup for this recipe. That's what the recipe calls for. I am going to be using a combination of light and dark. That's what I had on hand, but you can use light or dark. It doesn't matter which one. So we're basically just going to throw everything in a pot, bring it up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer. We're going to let it simmer for about 15 minutes until it starts to thicken a little bit, and then we will stir in the nuts. I misspoke. I said we're going to throw everything in. We're not. We're going to throw in all of our sugars, all of our liquids, and then we'll add the nuts at the very end. So fast and furious, quick and easy. Make sure you have your canner ready to go. This is a water bath canning recipe, so you can water bath can or you can steam can. You guys know that I love steam canning, so I have 3 quarts of simmering water waiting in my canner. It's all ready to go. Just make sure if you are water bath canning that you have enough water in your canner to cover your jars by at least an inch once you have them in there. This recipe will make approximately 4 of the 8-ounce jelly jars, so you don't need a ton of water in your canner. All right, I'm going to bring you in close and we're going to get started. Okay guys, here we go. We're going to put our heat on a medium heat to get started. So first we are going to add 1.5 cups of our corn syrup. And like I said, I'm using a combination of light and dark. You use whatever you prefer. Then we need 1 cup of pure maple syrup, not pancake syrup, not imitation stuff. You want the real thing here. We want 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm using lightly packed brown sugar, or you can use white granulated sugar. And then we need 1/2 cup of water. And give that a stir. Then we're going to increase our heat to a medium high. We want to bring it up to a boil, and then we're going to reduce it to what they're calling a gentle boil, which is the same as a simmer. We're going to reduce it to a light simmer, and we're going to let it simmer for about 15 minutes just until it starts to thicken. Okay guys, I have a nice gentle boil simmer going on here. I do want to give you a word to the wise. Make sure that you use a pot that's kind of deep, because even though it's not a lot of volume, sugar when you cook it does expand, and when it was coming up to a boil, it was rising in the pot. So make sure you use a pot that's got some depth to it so that it doesn't boil over for you as you're bringing it up to temperature. But that's about what we want, just a nice gentle boil, nice simmer, and we're going to let that happen for 15 minutes, and then I'll bring you back and we're going to stir in our nuts, cook it for another 5, and then we're all set for canning. Okay guys, we've been simmering for 15 minutes, so now we're going to go ahead and add our nut pieces. 2 cups of walnut pieces is what you want. We're gonna stir those in. We're gonna continue cooking this for 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna get my canner and my jars ready. Okay guys, we are all set for canning. I went ahead and cooked the walnuts in with the syrup for about 5 minutes. So we are ready for canning things up. You wanna make sure you start with 2 hot jars. Again, we're canning this in the 8-ounce jelly jars. I do not have any canning instructions for anything larger. So we need to ladle our syrup into 1/4 inch headspace. We're gonna debubble and then proceed with canning. Modern canning guidelines state that you do not need to pre-sterilize your jars or your lids as long as you are processing for 10 minutes or more. And we're gonna be processing for 10 minutes. So we're gonna ladle in our syrup. This stuff smells amazing. Okay, once you get to about 1/4 inch headspace, you're going to use a debubbling tool, plastic butter knife, or a chopstick to release any air bubbles. So just poke around your jar. And then we're going to take a paper towel dipped in white vinegar to clean our rims. Syrup is obviously very sticky and we don't want anything to interfere with a good seal, so I highly recommend you use the white vinegar to clean the rims of your jars. And we're going to center our lids. My lids, I just washed them and set them aside. And then we're going to add our bands to fingertip tight. And in the canner they go. Okay guys, I got exactly 4 jelly jars. So this recipe for me was spot on. Make sure that you don't overcook it and don't boil it too hard. It really needs to be a very low boil or a simmer. So I have my 4 jars in my canner. I had 3 quarts of simmering water in the bottom of my canner along with my rack. If you are water bath canning, you want to make sure that you have enough water to cover your jars by at least 1 inch, and it should be simmering as well. So now we're going to put on the lid, crank up our heat. For steam canning, there's a dial gauge on the top of your canner that will tell you when to start your processing time. If you're a water bath canning, you want to make sure you are at a full rolling boil before you start your processing time. Once you get there, you want to reduce your heat just to maintain the full rolling boil or in your green zone on your canner, on your steam canner with the gauge. Once our processing time is up, we do want to let our jars sit in the canner for at least 5 minutes. With steam canning, it's not a safety issue for waiting the 5 minutes, but I have learned that with working with sugar syrup of any sort, it will siphon. So make sure you leave the lid on if you're steam canning for 5 minutes, then remove your lid and then you can take your jars out. Just a little tip on that. So process 10 minutes, wait for 5, and then I'll bring you back. Okay guys, we are all done. After my processing time was up, I turned off my canner. I left the lid on my steam canner for an additional 5 minutes. If you're water bath canning, you can go ahead and take the lid off. It's just with steam canning, leaving the lid on does help eliminate siphoning, especially where sugar syrup is concerned. So, and then I took my lid off and let my jar sit an extra 5 minutes. Anyway, here we go. Does that not look just fabulous? And it tastes so, so good. This is gonna be great as a gift or for Christmas morning breakfast. A couple things I wanted to mention. If you want to make it special, since it is for the holidays, you could add a couple of splashes of bourbon, would be fantastic in this. At the very end, just go ahead and throw in a couple of tablespoons of bourbon, a tablespoon or 2, depending on your preference. You could also infuse this with some spices. If you like cinnamon, that would be lovely here. You could add some dried cinnamon to your syrup. You could also infuse it by putting a cinnamon stick or 2 while it's cooking, and then just remove the cinnamon stick before you can it up. And you could use any other dry spices that you want to try to jazz this up. You could also infuse it with some vanilla, would be lovely here. Scraping the caviar from a vanilla bean and including it, simmering with a vanilla bean pod would be fantastic. You could also add a little bit of extra flavor by adding some maple extract or some vanilla extract. So lots of options. This is really fantastic. I'm so excited to do this. If you followed me last year, you saw we made the praline syrup, and I will leave a link for that in an iCard and in the description box below. That was fantastic as well. That was with pecans, and it was a similar recipe, but it was pecans instead of the walnuts, and there was no maple syrup in that one. So a little bit different, but still a similar recipe, also fantastic for gifting. So thanks so much for coming along with me today, guys. As always, if you have any comments or questions, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.